The views and opinions expressed in the Golden Boot podcast are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Golden Boot podcast as a whole.
Y'all ready to get rolling? Quiet on the set. Hey, welcome back. Another hot episode of HBCU Hour. It's your boy Pooh Bear. Here by myself right now, but we got a special guest going to be coming in with us soon. But man, we are back. Sorry for the wait, as the subject says and the title says. Man, life be life, and so we had a lot of things going on. Work, trips, things like that of that nature. Sorry, we have missed some good football these first 3 weeks because the MEAC SWAC challenge was a great game. And then week 1 and then we're here now for week 2. But we get the recap. Well, actually going into week 3, we get the recap week 2. Talk about some of the good games and some of the best games we've had so far. But before we get ready to get started, man, let's go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsors over at BetOnline. BetOnline.ag. We will be back in 1 minute. BetOnline.ag is your number one source for all your sports information, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds, lines, and player injury reports for this year's NBA and NHL playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters. This season, we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs. We have everything from NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL to golf, tennis, UFC, and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games that you can play right from your home. Head on over to betonline.ag today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use the promo code BLEAV to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Hey, we are back. Man, what a weekend. But first, man, we gotta talk, man. We had some great games, like I said. So I'm gonna do a mini. I mean, I know we all know what happened. Norfolk State versus FAMU, week 0, SWAC MEAC challenge. And Norfolk State gave FAMU almost everything they could handle. FAMU was able to survive that one. I know we always say cardiac cat, so we're gonna have to say, slithering snakes or something, because FAMU has found a way to survive their 2 wins this season by the skin of their teeth. But man, the Norfolk State Florida A&M game, week 0, fantastic game. If I'm not mistaken, one of the highest drawing games on TV ratings for the SWAC MEAC challenge in a long time. Then you move on to week 1. You had the Orange Blossom Classic, which left some of us scratching our heads on some of the play calling and some of the decisions. But it was still a great game. You got to see North Carolina Central take on Alabama State. Andrew Body makes his debut. And right now looks like his exit as well. But Andrew Body had a great game. But man, North Carolina Central was after it. They came in hungry, had a lot to prove. And the post Davis Richards era began as Harris takes over and Walker Harris. And man, defense, special teams, you name it. North Carolina Central was doing it and was able to take down Alabama State. Then you had Most of the other good game on week one. FAMU again, this time against South Carolina State. They got by again by the skin of their teeth. South Carolina State was North Carolina State was I'm sorry. South Carolina State was they were up big, in that double digits. FAMU found a way to come back. Get through that game. We then you had some of the more lopsided games. We had a Alabama A&M. Unfortunately, Jay White is in here, and that's what made me think of Alabama A&M taking on Auburn, which just seemed just completely wrong. You had Alcorn taking on. I'm sorry, not Alcorn. You had Grambling taking on ULM. Or UL. I'm sorry, Grambling taking on UL, Jackson State taking on ULM, who ULM now looks like they are a pretty good team. This year they brought in 59 transfers. People, new coach, and everybody thought this game was going to be kind of lopsided in favor of Jackson State, and ULM came out and proved something completely different. But Jackson State took on them. You had Alcorn. Who did Alcorn play? I want to say it was was it that they played? UAB. There you go. Alcorn took on UAB. Lost that one 41-3. Then, man, what probably shocker of the weekend, Texas Southern post the Andrew Body under Coach Dishman taking on Prairie View, who many thought was, had a chance to compete in the West. Texas Southern came out there with the win. Kind of the shocker of the weekend of week one. Y'all tell us who was your favorite week one matchup or game that you enjoyed. Trying to pull up, make sure I didn't miss any. Some of those other games. Mississippi Valley took on, was it Murray State? That's not what I'm looking for. Yes, it is. Pine Bluff took on Arkansas. You had Mississippi Valley took on Tennessee State. South Carolina State FAMU, we talked about. Texas and Southern and Prairie View. Bethune-Cookman took on South Florida. Southern took on McNeese, and then Grambling at UL. So yeah, it was some of the rest of those games were not fun to watch. Then on the MEAC side, you actually had some let's see here. On the MEAC side, we mentioned North Carolina Central and the Orange Blossom Classic. But you also had Howard took on Rutgers. Morgan State took on Hampton. South Carolina State took on Florida A&M. Norfolk State took on East Carolina, and Delaware State took on Sacred Heart. That was another shocker. I think that one was even more of a shock because, again, nobody saw that coming. We were thinking Delaware State was going for an offer, and they pop up with a win in week one, and man, we were not expecting that one. But hey, we got our guest in the building. Hadn't had him on in a while, but looking forward to having him. Got to bring our good brother in from Fox 54 here in Huntsville, Alabama, the sports director, Southern alum, the man himself, no other than Mr. Mo Carter. What's good, Mo? How you doing, man?
Man, Pooh, I'm great, dude. How are you?
All right, hold on. Got to give you your just due, man. But man, I'm just kind of recapping. We hadn't been on in a while. Life, man. And then week 1 football popped up, and nothing could have go right that week. So, but man, had to recap that. But week 1, we saw a lot of our HBCUs take on FBS opponents, those money games.
Yes.
Week 2, kind of roles reverse as you had a lot of teams taking on lower level, D2 teams, not lower level in talent, but just taking on a lower level D2 teams, and the results were the exact same, just in the opposite direction.
No, absolutely. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say for the SWAC, they took on 5 opponents that were from the SIAC. And yeah, a majority of the games were somewhat lopsided, to say the least. But, I think that just kind of rolls from year to year as far as if you're going to get a competitive game or if you're going to get an upset like we saw last year with Miles upsetting Alabama State, but that wasn't the case, this year. And then, you saw Grambling, taking it to Skegee. You saw Southern get off to a slow start, but eventually getting things right and making things happen against Savannah State. Jackson State all over Lane. As a matter of fact, on a coach's call today, Coach T.C. Taylor actually said that they went to 10-minute quarters in the second half just because clearly the game was out of hand, and at that point you don't want to get anybody hurt, and just from a respect factor or whatever in that sense. So yeah, we did see a lot of those, and I think there were some other crossovers as well in some of the other conferences. Of course, A&T taking on Winston-Salem State, and I want to say that game went in overtime, if I'm not mistaken.
It did.
Yeah. So I think that was probably the most competitive one. But of course, those two teams are long-time rivals,
Right.
So when you talk about tossing the record books out, that you can put them as a true example as far as it don't matter what level of competition they're on in that sense. But yeah, it was a very interesting week from the HBCU perspective. And now as you get ready for week 3, some very interesting out-of-conference matchups. And I need y'all to keep those words in mind, out of conference, because who and I will talk about one particular game. You're going to be like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't mention them, but UAPB also took on Arkansas Baptist.
Correct.
And it felt like any whooping they've taken over the last year and 1 or 2 games, they decided to dish it back out. And yeah, and dish it they did.
Yeah, Coach Hampton said this morning on the call that clearly it was a way to kind of build the confidence of the guys. But another thing, too, was the fact that every person that dressed out on Saturday saw playing time.
Wow.
You technically really don't see that on a collegiate level a lot.
Right.
But, they had an opportunity to literally go ahead and do that. And that's exactly what happened, for them. And, of course, I think they needed that type of momentum after losing to Arkansas the way they did. And before they have to get ready to head, 2.5 hours east over to Memphis to take on Tennessee State in the Southern Heritage Classic this upcoming week, which I think should be another good game. That game last year was actually really, really good. I mean, a blocked field goal that turns into a touchdown really was the difference in that contest. He actually mentioned that or whatever, too, this morning. So, there are a lot of guys that remember that. I'm more interested, though, about what's going to happen with that game moving forward, because UAPB only signed a 2-year deal to take on Tennessee State. And if I remember correctly, technically the deal that was originally Tennessee State versus Jackson State, I think for this quorum of the actual game, Tennessee State's contract ends with them as well. So just interested to see, what does that look like moving forward with the next negotiations for whoever they bring in. Of course, I think Tennessee State will probably be the first team they talk with. Will they make a phone call to Jackson, Mississippi? We'll see. Coach Sanders isn't there anymore. So I think that played a big part. Or, are they happy with what Arkansas Pine Bluff brings to the table too? I think it was like 32,000 fans last year from a paid attendance standpoint.
Right.
You know, not as good as the JSU Tennessee State years and prior, but still pretty good, you know, to say the least. I mean, Arkansas Pine Bluff is probably has, you know, one of the smaller fan bases in the SWAC, but they have dedicated fans who will travel.
Right.
So I'm interested to see what the future of that's going to look like. But of course, HBCU Go has got that game on Saturday. And if you're like many people I know that follow HBCU football, you'll have multiple screens going to check out those games.
Yeah. We mentioned Alabama A&M as well, taking on Kentucky State. Kind of lost in that, and kind of considering who we're talking about, not talked about as much. Coach Connell Maynard gets his 100th win as a head coach.
Yes, and of course he can only follow it up with 100 wins. Means that I must be getting old, and I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, he told that to Nick Kuzma, my weekend sports anchor, who was covering the game for us. And of course, he said that this morning on the call. But yeah, definitely big congrats to Coach Maynard on win number 100 in his career. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you think about A&M gets a victory after getting mollywopped by Auburn, right, the way they did. And, you know, Coach Maynard was able to get a lot of players, you know, some playing time or whatever this past week too. But I will say this, shout out to all the SWAC coaches that, you know, showed love to Coach Maynard too, as they were getting ready to, you know, get off each one of their calls, you know, from arch rival Eddie Robinson Jr. in Alabama State. Eddie Robinson said he's going to put something in the mail for him. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
You know, whatever that means between them. And then, you know, various other coaches were just, you know, congratulating Coach Maynard on that. So, yeah, you know, win number 100 of his career, you know, with a career that goes back, you know, from a head coach standpoint, back at Winston-Salem to Hampton. So, you know, definitely happy for coaching company. But, you know, Coach Maynard, he ain't really worried about that. After getting the victory, he's worried about Georgetown College coming to town next week, which, while on paper it's FCS against NAIA, Georgetown is actually a legit NAIA program. So they're not overlooking them in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. It's funny. Jay White mentioning here said Duke Miller is special. And I know you weren't there, Mo, at the game, but he really shined out there in a wide receiver core that I feel is probably one of the best in the SWAC, if not HBCU football, with some of the weapons they have there. Quad Brown had himself a pretty nice game. The running game was going. But there were times where A&M just kind of looked a little lackadaisical. Mm-hmm. But there were times I looked and I was like, man, this defense is strong. So, but it's hard to tell because playing Kentucky State and say it every year, A&M could win the SIAC. I don't think anybody has a doubt in that. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, if this was we're in 2024 now, so, you know, if this was 25 years ago and before, easy conversation back when they were, you know, part of that league, but clearly they've been D1 since basically the new millennium, and, you know, you have to move forward. I do know one thing, though, that that was definitely talked about with my sports team members on Sunday about the game, and that was mainly that A&M still has a lot of things they need to clean up, especially from a penalty standpoint.
Yes.
They were penalized for what Coach Maynard would call silly mistakes, boneheaded plays.
Yeah. There was one penalty. I can't remember who got it, but he picked up the wide receiver. Whistles are blowing. He picks him up and drops him on his head. He's lucky he wasn't ejected.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, seeing something like that, it's like, man, that was not good. I'm actually trying to pull up now those stats to see those penalties. Before I move on to a game that you were actually, really familiar with. Hold on, here we go. Let's see what the penalties were. Team, here we go. Miscellaneous yards, not there. Oh, here we go. 14 penalties for 139 yards. So that is definitely significant.
No, absolutely. And I mean, look, you're not going to win a game against many, no matter what level of competition it is, with 14 penalties over 100 plus yards for sure. So, you know, those things have to be cleaned up. And I mean, you know, a lot of those things can either be silly, or a lot of those things could just be from the aspect of, what's the best word I want to go ahead and say, you know, immature play is something else I could describe from that. Or honestly, at the end of the day, it's like just trying to do too much. Just trying to do too much. You have to be disciplined from the beginning of from pre-snap all the way to the end of the whistle on every single play. You have to be disciplined no matter who you are, whether you're the preseason all SWAC selection or you're a guy on third string trying to just, you know, get those mental reps, knowing that my chance could be coming up next. So you definitely have to find a way to be disciplined no matter what school you are. Discipline literally rolls from the team that's ranked number 1 in the nation from Georgia all the way down to the AIA ranks.
Yeah. Want to take a guess how many penalties Kentucky State had?
9, 8.
They had 2 penalties for 10 yards.
Really? Okay.
So 2 penalties versus 14, 10 yards versus 139. So yeah, had that been a little bit stiffer competition, we'd be having a completely different conversation about A&M, and saying hopefully this week he hits number 100. But you know, so congratulations to Coach Maynard, well deserved, and we'll see how things play out. Next, man, this game coming into the game, I thought was going to be really competitive. I felt like A&M was going to try to, you know, they gonna get their lick back. That was the question, you know. But you were there, you and Centauri, to cover the Alabama State Miles game. First, going into it, what was the atmosphere like?
Atmosphere was, you know, pretty typical for Alabama State. You know, I got there maybe about 2.5 hours before kickoff. You know, saw some of the tailgate and saw some folks I've known from my days working in Montgomery. You know, they were really excited about that. And you know, when I started asking some of the Hornet fans, I was chatting with them like, "Man, y'all gonna get y'all revenge?" We're like, "Absolutely, we ain't forgot about last year. We haven't forgot about last year." And then, you know, I get up into the booth. I start watch pregame warm-ups. You saw both coaches, you know, really with their little solid demeanor and just kind of coaching the guys up, understanding, you know, how big of a game this was, because both teams were looking for their first victory of the season. I mean, Miles College had lost a tough one to West Alabama, and then of course everybody saw on national TV what happened to Alabama State down in the Orange Blossom Classic. So as far as atmosphere, you know, it was pretty good. I think it was like 15,000, you know, total for the attendance, and it was a whiteout for Alabama State, which, you know, a lot of their fans were rocking white, and there's a lot of purple and gold on the other side too. I will say this though, and maybe this is just me, I hear whiteout, so I'm expecting like the team to wear white too, and then Bama State comes out with only a white helmet, and then black on black. So you know, I don't really, you know, control that narrative, but I just thought that's the case.
Yeah. I guess the only way in Alabama you can do a blackout is at night, and so considering what time that game was, you know, but you are right. I didn't realize there was a whiteout game for him.
Yes, it certainly was, because I mean, all of a sudden you see Miles wearing their white uniforms out on the other side of well, 4 sidelines from where my viewpoint was. But I'm say atmosphere, you know, definitely seems good. And of course, you know, these two teams are only separated by like 85 miles. So you knew the crowd was going to be really good. The purple marching machine starts coming through, and they start blowing, and then the ASU marching hornets start blowing. So even the beginning stages of it were pretty solid. And I mentioned the bands because let's just say this: Purple Marching Machine might have taken a little bit more time than what they should have for halftime.
Oh man!
And I'm not saying that people got mad or whatever, but I'll say from a broadcast standpoint, that really threw us off a little bit because Santori and I are coming back from the halftime stuff. Where they show some of the band things. We go into our breaks, we're running to whatever's, and then our producer comes to the ears like, "Hey guys, you basically have to do a quick welcome," and then boom, we're at kickoff. And I'm like, whoa, So yes, sometimes when bands go over, it will disrupt the flow of the broadcast when you're on the TV side, even on the ESPN level.
Oh wow. So you talked about the atmosphere, the game itself. What's the that when I saw the play that you posted online? I can't think of his name. Running back. My God. Marshawn Lynch versus the Saints, and I know you're familiar with that. So
very familiar, very familiar. Yeah, he was dragging defenders into the end zone. But as I mentioned, on my tweet, and you can hit up Twitter at MoCarterFox54 and check it out. It was an amazing display of speed, agility, and strength because he was able to juke several defenders, cut across the field, and then just take it to the house while breaking tackles within the 15 to 20-yard realm from the goal line. He actually got face masks and still kept running and then carried defenders into the end zone. I think that play right there really, really blew things open for the Alabama State Hornets against Miles because, Miles had just put some points on the board for the first time. So they're only down 10-3. If the defense is able to get the ball back, all of a sudden, this is either a tie game if they get a touchdown or it'll be a 4-point game. But then Quincy just had other plans. The other thing, too, was Alabama State was moving the ball decently, but I think that was the one play that really, really made their running game become what it was because they kept attacking the left side of the offensive line, and I just don't know what Miles was doing to really, really stop it. Really nothing now that I think about it in that sense because that play did start to the left and then it cut back across the field or whatever for it. But, that really, really set the tone for us, them, wanting to run the ball. Especially when you have a true freshman quarterback making his first ever collegiate appearance on the football field Saturday.
Yeah, wow. There was another Alabama team, HBCU wise, that they had a game and they lost, but at least for them, it was exciting because they kept it close. On the other side of that,
before we get away from that or whatever, I wanted to throw this out real quick with Alabama State. So of course, Andrew Body is out for however long you want to say.
Right.
The depth chart had O'Brien as the starter. 10 minutes before the game, the sports information director walks into our office where we're getting ready to broadcast from. He was like, "Yeah, scratch O'Brien too. Didn't pass concussion protocol." Matter of fact, they said that he was had to be in a dark room for 2 or 3 days because it had got that bad. So, and I know Coach Robinson had mentioned that Hayes was going to probably see some playing time. And as I'm looking down on the field, all I saw was Hayes, warming up with the one. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Hayes 9 times out of 10. So I want to say that kind of led into the fact that kudos to the Alabama State offensive coaching staff for basically going to Hayes and say, "Look, you're going to be the guy, but we're not going to put a lot of pressure on you to really win this ball game. Manage the offense the best way you can." And he definitely did that. I'm pretty sure he had some throws he wish he could have back, but he's got a nice spin on his ball for sure. But then also, too, you got a tough offensive line that was controlling the line of scrimmage. And then when you rush for 250 yards on the day, that definitely makes things a whole lot easier for your offense with a true freshman quarterback. So kudos to Coach Robinson and the staff for making that happen. Now, I do know that Hayes did leave the game because he did take a pretty vicious hit from one of the Miles defenders. So that allowed Zach Sims, the Thompson High School alumnus, to come in, and get some reps or whatever in the fourth quarter. But so right now, for the foreseeable future, it's probably going to be two freshman quarterbacks leading the charge for Alabama State. And whoever it is, as long as they can manage the offense and basically not lose games, I think Alabama State's still going to be all right with that tough defense.
Man, I didn't realize the concussion was that bad.
I don't think a whole lot of people did either.
Right.
And of course, I'm giving you information that was provided to us from a broadcast standpoint. That wasn't even told to us from the coaching staff. We were told in our pregame meeting that, hey, he had a concussion, and that was about it. So, but the sports information director kind of let us know the real deal on it. So, you take safety to a full extent. You have to. You definitely have to in that situation. So I'm glad that they were able to really notice that and make sure that young man is going to be A-okay in that scenario and not really like just kind of throwing him back into the mix. Like we've seen that happen through the years, and even more recently to Tagovailoa. So yeah, I will say, kudos to them or whatever with that. But, it'll be interesting to see what Alabama State does, moving forward. And it was just really interesting, too, that anytime we actually saw an Alabama State player have some type of injury or get nicked up, first thing was saying, like, hey, they can't afford no more injuries on this team. We kept saying that throughout the broadcast. If you want to go back and check that out.
Yeah. Next up, I was just checking it out. See, Alabama State has Samford in Birmingham. I'll be honest with you, Mo. I knew this Samford team or this Samford game will be a pretty hard one for Alabama State to win. But I thought they had a chance with a healthy Andrew Body. Now I'm kind of questioning it. I don't feel comfortable with that at all. I'm gonna be honest with you. I still think the defense is stout, and the offense can make plays. If they can establish that run, then we're talking a totally different story. But yeah, I'm not, and I look at that Samford game, and I look at the rest of the schedule, and I mean they've got some they've got some winnable games where they can get on the run, but they've also got some games where it's gonna be a no-go.
Yeah, I mean, clearly with Alabama State, you're literally gonna have to look at it like, game by game. One thing that one thing about the Stanford game is that, they've got a quarterback, you and I have seen for a number of years, and Quincy Crittenden, played at Austin High School over in the Decatur, Alabama area. And, he was a guy who was thrust into playing, probably much earlier than what he expected, especially during the playoff, run and stuff. But, he's been solid so far this year. Let me see. I got his stats right here. All right. So far he's got 451 yards in 2 games, 2 touchdown passes with a long TD pass of 68 yards. Unfortunately, Samford is 0-2 on the season, but they get their first home game of the year. I will say this. I was shocked that they did fall in their first game to West Georgia. I know West Georgia is a legit team from the D2 ranks that is, making their D1 transition. But, hey, West Georgia put all the victory. And then after that, Samford had to go to Gainesville, Florida, and take on those Florida Gators after the Gators were embarrassed by Miami the previous week. And
right.
That's what just happened. But, now they're going to welcome Alabama State. I expect that game to be practically a sellout because Samford's stadium's not that large. And Alabama State does have a large contingent of fans in the Birmingham area. Plus, we're only looking at about an hour and 10-minute drive, tops out there. So it's going to be interesting to see how things go over there at Pete Hanna Stadium. But I also know for like Coach Robinson, he said – they're focusing on Samford, and then they are going to enjoy the bye week that they have the following week because they need it. And need it. It's been some physical games they played, and they expect Samford to kind of be the same way. So definitely will be interesting to see, can that defense hold up against Crittenden on Saturday? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. All right. Now let's get to this other game here. As I mentioned, another Alabama team played. And if you hadn't figured out by now, talking about Tuskegee, went down to the hole, take on Grambling. And from the Tuskegee standpoint, it's a lot of, man, they, really played, played well and, happy with what we saw. From the Grambling standpoint, it's like, yeah, this is, we got the win, but, did we?
I mean, I guess you have to look at it in several different phases. I mean, Coach Joseph said this morning that, once again, happy with the win, but too many mistakes were made. Mm-hmm. So, and also he said, like, yeah, Miles Crawley played very, very well, but he said he kind of got on him on plays that he still could have made to probably like make that score look even worse than what it was. So right. I got to give Coach Joseph some props. I got to give him some props for being happy with the victory, but also pointing out things to make his team better. Like, hey, you guys did good, but here's how you can become great. I like that mindset in a sense. I've kind of always had that mindset when it comes to like the people I worked with or whatever. Like, hey, you always applaud folks for the good works they did. Now show them how they can enhance their work, enhance their skills, and enhance their play. And I think that's really what he wants to see. Because I mean, they had a tough one against Lafayette or Louisiana, depending on where you're at.
ULL.
Look, to me, it's always been Louisiana Lafayette. It just rolls off the tongue better, you're with me. But I know, nowadays athletic departments changing the different names and whatnot. Like for the longest time, you and I have always heard Middle Tennessee State, but now they just go by Middle Tennessee. So it's Arkansas Little Rock is another one. Now they just go by Little Rock. So, but yeah, they had a tough one against Louisiana Lafayette, and because they did clearly, Grambling was going to be in a situation where they know they definitely needed to get a victory before they hit the road to take on Texas A&M Commerce, a team that Coach Mickey Joseph said don't take them lightly either, because he remembers only a few years ago when they were a D2 power. So,
yeah, you talked about that, and this is another one. We talked about the penalties that Alabama A&M had against Kentucky State. Grambling had 3 fumbles in this game. Didn't lose any, but they had 3 fumbles. They also added to the woes 16 penalties, 166 yards. It's amazing that they survived that game.
No, absolutely. That's God. I thought Alabama A&M had a lot of penalties, but that's even more. And of course, penalties like that will also extend the game too. Remember, it was an HBCU Go national broadcast, so them TV timeouts are going to be long. And then if you extend it with these penalties, it definitely could make for a long night inside the hole up there at Eddie Robinson Stadium. But I'm pretty sure Glamour's going to try to clean some things up, because they got a trip to Texas A&M Commerce coming up, and then they got Jackson State the following week. So interesting stretch for what Grambling's got coming up as they roll into the middle portion of their schedule.
Yeah, another one, man, and we talked about them. Well, he mentioned in the foreshow, PV losing to Texas Southern. Well, they bounced back and got a win against Northwestern State. It's funny because Northwestern State's a team where I don't know what to make out of them. It's kind of like some of the teams on the in the SEC. What do I make of this? But yeah, they bounced back against Northwestern. One win I think was really impressed with this weekend: South Carolina State beating Citadel.
Yes. That was probably the best out of conference win for any HBCU this week, and that wasn't playing another HBCU. I thought that was very, 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 very good by Coach Berry and company to get that victory. I mean, the Citadel traditionally has always been a tough team. Of course, they got the military backgrounds, which means that what?
Discipline.
And Chennis Berry and company were able to, get a victory in that game. I looked at the stats and it looks like, they had a pretty decent amount of control in that game as well. So yeah, shout out to Coach Barry and them. And let's just say this: if you thought that maybe he may need some time at South Carolina State to, to get him as a competitor, I guess they got enough time or whatever, because that will definitely help propel them into the rest of the non-conference slate before they roll into, the conference slate on the road to potentially a Celebration Bowl for the Bulldogs.
Yeah. But yeah, man, we weren't on, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it now. Chennisberry should be 2-0 right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of the nicest way to put this. I'm not saying that the referees all got residence in Tallahassee, but I will say this. Them referees were very, I guess you could say, nearsighted, farsighted. I don't know which one. They need bifocals for some of the play, some of those, things they saw in that South Carolina State FAMU game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember where was I at? I was in the studio first week, and I saw people posting or whatever. So, I pulled it up real quick while I was trying to get everything else going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hey, South Carolina State came out and just did what they did. The only thing is that they just didn't finish in that game. And one thing I'm starting to learn about Florida A&M so far is that they are a team that, even though they get down, they find ways to finish. So I think we're kind of seeing the early blueprint on how you're going to have to, get the rat. Like if you're going to beat them from the beginning, you got to beat them all the way to the end. Like you got to almost step on their neck and keep it on their neck until things go. And their head coach even said the same thing. Said that they dug themselves in some holes, and he doesn't want to see that happen. Moving forward. So yeah. South Carolina State, I see exactly what you mean now about the whole 2-0 thing. Sorry, but there's so much information that's been going through my head or whatever now over these last couple of weeks, especially with, doing the regular job and then doing the ESPN Plus stuff, that it kind of slips by just a tad bit. I mean, I got a whole lot of information in my brain or whatever for the game I've got coming up on Saturday that we'll talk about in a little bit too. Yeah.
Terrence says, weren't those MEAC refs? I don't know, man. I'm talking. I'm just kidding. I don't know. They probably were. I don't know. Usually they try to do a neutral, but I mean, I guess.
Yeah, and see, that's for out of conference referees. It varies. It really does vary. I know, like if this was a Celebration Bowl, it would have been a different set of refs from another FCS conference, like Southland Conference or Missouri Valley, OVC, like it would have been one of those staffs. But I think, and I could be wrong, but I think because FAM was the home team, it would be refs from the Southwestern Athletic Conference. But I'm not exactly sure, how exactly that what I didn't get a chance to really look all of that up in that sense.
Yeah. Another surprise game for the weekend. Or surprise, I guess you ending. Howard with the game-winning field goal over Mercyhurst.
Yeah, man, that contest there, I got a chance to actually see the highlights on SportsCenter. They with the what was the blocked PAT that got ran back, and like that was a game. That was a game, and I mean, I know this is coming on HBCU base show or whatever, but low-key, you kind of got a feel for Mercyhurst in that sense. They're another one making that D1 transition, and it's kind of like, oh, man, we got these dudes. And then, no, you don't. Yeah, but no, shout out to Howard or whatever for having their guys dig down deep and literally play all the way to the final play of the game, and that's what made the thing happen. Of course, as I mentioned, you get Howard with this victory. You get Prairie View with their victory over Northwestern State. You get Howard, Prairie View, South Carolina State with their victory over the Citadel. All of a sudden, these HBCU conference profiles are starting to kind of go up in whatever you want to call the version of the net rankings for college football on the FCS level. So, any win over another conference is always definitely a good thing. And those were, 3 great ones just over the weekend or whatever.
Yeah. I'll throw this in. I guess I'll talk. Well, no, I'll leave that. I'll wait. I'll wait on that one because it's funny. North Carolina State, though, and also Hampton, all state and state. And guess you could say Norfolk State got the win over Virginia State, and Hampton got the win over Virginia Union.
Yep, that was a part of the the bigger HBCU conference teams taking on the smaller HBCU conference team. I think collectively, if you add those games plus the ones from the SWAC, I want to say it was like 8 total. So yeah, just across the board. I mean, you had a lot of crossovers from an HBCU standpoint, and a lot of those games too are somewhat older rivalries as well. They may not be on the same level, but they're definitely old school rivalries that a certain generation of fans definitely do remember. But for any coach, it's kind of like, hey, take out the scholarship portal, whatever and stuff. No matter who you are, you're still going out there to do one thing, and that's to win the game on the business trip.
Yeah. Some teams that were on business trips this weekend and got pretty much whipped. FAMU, Bethune, Alcorn State, North Carolina Central, Texas Southern, all woodshed.
Yeah, had some money games and had some other games that, I mean, you can't really sugarcoat it. I mean, it really was what it was. I know for Texas Southern, their head coach, Chris Dishman, basically said that he feels his team probably celebrated the win against Prairie View too much. Instead of giving them 24 hours, he said he gave them 48 hours with the holiday weekend and stuff. And he said, probably never do that again now.
Right. Probably
never do that again now. So yeah, they definitely, took one on the chin. Of course, we know that FAM, took on Miami. And look, I'll tell you this. For a while, as I'm taking a look at that game, they were giving us the updates on the broadcast.
Right.
I'm sitting here like, man, FAM might be able to, cover this.
Keep it cold. Yeah. I agree because I saw it. So Dylan said, FAMU Miami. Should be a good game. I said, no, it's not. This is gonna be a blowout. He said, no. I said, I bet you this. I said Miami wins by at least 21. There's no disrespect to FAMU or anything. It's just strictly because of what I had seen out of Miami thus far, honestly, and a little bit what I've seen out of FAMU. I was surprised when the score was, it was like, I think it was like 15-3. Then it was 25-3 or something. Then it was 25-6.
Correct.
And I was like, uh-oh. I was like, although be it, just field goal, I was like, fam, you might be doing, because you keep getting in that red zone, something's going to happen.
Correct. Yeah, it was 25-6 at the half.
Yeah. So it was from there. I was shocked, kind of. I say shocked, but you get what I mean.
No, absolutely. So yeah, that was the case there. But Vanderbilt, they took it to Alcorn.
G at least got the win on Twitter. G was fighting with the people all week on Twitter.
I saw some of those posts from G. I saw some of the posts, and I'm just gonna say, man, look, that's on him.
Yeah,
he handles his business accordingly, and that's all I'm gonna say, to that. But yeah, so that was the case there. But I do know that Alcorn did have an opportunity to pass by the Titans facility and see some things about Steve McNair. So I thought that was great for them to actually have that opportunity. I'll tell you another game I was really, really impressed with. I just hate that the end results. That was Mississippi Valley State,
Lamar. I got that on here. kept it close. It was you look up it's fourth quarter and it's 21-7, and you're like, Valley has a chance here.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
so
14.
I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, it's 14-7 at the end of the first, and then 21-7 at the half, and then it was 21-14 deep into the fourth quarter. And Coach Wade's, I didn't get a chance to really engage everything he said today, but he kind of said in so many words, we had our chances, but at the same time, now I know that my guy, what my guys are capable of, moving forward. And I mean, look, for anyone that doesn't know, Lamar is not a slouch.
No,
They
not at
are
all.
not a slouch. And I mean, Lamar's another one of those teams, in the Southland Conference, right outside of the Houston area. There's a lot of talent that they typically pick up, year to year. So, for Valley to go over there and give them a really, really good game, you hope that things can, kind of start to turn for Coach Wade and company. But, we will see. I know they got to go to Murray State this upcoming week, and that won't be easy in any way, shape, or form. I mean, their mascot is the Racers, and that offense typically races up and down the field. So,
yeah,
we'll see how that goes. But yeah, shout out to Valley for definitely, showing their hand and being like, look, we were definitely here to play for sure. And I hope that they can continue to improve that moving forward.
Yeah. Ant chimes in. Ant praying for you, man. He says, Mo, what you think about JSU evaluating the quarterback spot?
Interesting. Ant went ahead and mentioned that. So, first of all, for anyone that does not know, I'll go ahead and just say this. I will be on the broadcast this week once again for ESPN Plus with Santorio Black for Southern versus Jackson State. So I talked to Coach TC Taylor, his offensive coordinator, and his defensive coordinator today. And these are where I'm at. These are just about all the notes that I wrote down today from preparing for that game. Yeah, I'm a bit critical thinker and writer, so yeah, I typically go with that. So first thing we asked him about that was why did McCoy get a little bit more playing time? And honestly, he just said he wanted him to really, really get his feet wet. He really, really did. And when he actually decided on McCoy, it was well received on the offense and on the fact that they knew that Jacobian was going to come in and get his playing time, but they really, really wanted McCoy to get some reps with the first team offense just in case anything ever happens with Morgan, moving forward. And I think that overall McCoy came in and probably impressed them even more than what they actually thought he was probably going to give with that. And, I think just moving forward this week and stuff, I think it becomes maybe more of a testy situation for Coach Graves and Coach Henry Miller as they have to prepare for two really good quarterbacks that have drastically different styles. I mean, both of them can run the ball, but I think Morgan probably has the better arm while McCoy has the better legs. So, it's not an easy situation if you're the opposing team, which is Southern University. But at the same time, I think, Coach TC Taylor is going to put the best guy out there, moving on this week. I wouldn't be surprised if by maybe Wednesday, Thursday, I go on Jackson State's website or get my email from Travis Jerome. Shout out to Big T. And his depth chart says Cam McCoy or Jacobian Morgan. Pulling an old Nick Saban trick from the past when it comes to quarterback scenarios. So, no, I think that it was really TC, who, of course, we know used to play quarterback a long time ago before switching over to receiver. I think it's just him really, seeing what he can get out of his guys to kind of build maybe a little healthy competition, and knowing that the next man up mentality will definitely, play a major part because, hey, we're only 2 games in. It's a long season. And for a team like Jackson State, I mean, they got one heck of a schedule. Hey, Pooh, you're muted.
I don't know how that happened. But I said, I'm going to say this in just. Morgan State falls short to their crosstown rival, Townsend. But it's Morgan State. 9 points. Defense held Towson to 14. Give them credit for that. But again, only 9 points. And it's I know they had the big outing against Hampton last week, but is this more offensive woes or is just kind of par for the course?
I don't know, man, because I mean they scored 30 points against Hampton last week. So it could have been offensive woes. Heck, it could have just been one of those 3 yards in a cloud of dust type games against Towson as well. I mean, I didn't get a chance to look at the full stats, but I mean that could be the case. I mean, it also could be a case of just things just didn't flow in the manner that they did. Of course, man. And looking at their schedule next week, man. They got to go to Ohio, so that won't be easy.
Yeah. Well, that's probably one of the best defenses on the FBS side too. Ironically. So
yeah. So we'll definitely see what happens. Look, but it's just so funny with these MEAC teams because I mean I know a lot of them want to win the out-of-conference games, but they know what the real time of the year is, and that's when you get to late October and all of November when our actual conference schedule begins, just due to them having just a 6-team conference from teams that play football. But I've got confidence in that Damon Wilson and company could possibly shock some folks this week and be in the running for a MEAC championship. I'm not going to try to throw them at the top, but I will say this: I wouldn't be surprised if they prevent somebody from going.
Yeah, it's true. True.
So, MEAC, make sure y'all got y'all tiebreakers ready.
North Carolina A&T, we mentioned before, they beat Winston-Salem in overtime, 27-20, if I'm not mistaken. So Vincent Brown will win number 2 on the career. Early win. They did actually look pretty competent last week on the offensive side, considering offensively last year they were anemic.
Yeah, Coach Brown has definitely, changed some things around. And just looking on social media from some folks that, that I know they're affiliated with that school, they are actually excited about what's, been brought to the forefront and to the table. And of course, I know once again, it was a D1 against D2 situation, but an A&T and Winston-Salem State, God, that rivalry goes back so far. And I mean, I'll say this: that rivalry is probably more equivalent to like an Alabama State to Skegee, just because of the distance between the two schools and the families that really do get separated. As far as folks who go to Winston-Salem, or the folks that go to North Carolina A&T, I'm pretty sure if I got Coach Maynard on the line, he could give you a whole lot more about that. Also, a guy like Stephen Gaither or even Coach Terrence Graves. People who have played on this, played in this game, from various sides. Tolly Carr is another one from HBCU game day. They know the real deal about that A&T versus Winston-Salem. And as we saw, it was a sold out crowd. I think tickets were sold out by Thursday of that week, and they were entertained from beginning all the way to the end in overtime at that. So I don't know what the future looks like for that from a non-conference scheduling standpoint, but hey, they can keep doing it. I'm pretty sure both schools won't have a problem with keeping it on the schedule.
Tennessee State, no comment. All right.
I mean,
that's all I can say about that.
I hate to say this. I had a feeling it was going to be like that. I just had a feeling. I mean, nothing against Coach Eddie George and company, but I mean, North Dakota State is North Dakota State, and quite frankly, I still think that North Dakota State should be 2-0 in the season.
I agree with that too.
I really, really do. Not taking away anything from what Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter was able to do late in that game against North Dakota State, but I do think that North Dakota State had several chances to literally beat Colorado, but as you see, they bounced back with a victory against Tennessee State, inviting them up to the Fargo Dome and send them back home in that sense. But from what I saw from like Nashville media and people close to the program, it doesn't look like anything significantly bad happened to Tennessee State in that game from an injury standpoint, anybody getting nicked up. They probably did get nicked up, but nothing long term. I think it's just back to the drawing board now. And as I mentioned, now they're going to go to Memphis and take on Arkansas Pine Bluff on Saturday.
Yeah. Chuck says, I can see the two Eddies on the coach's hot seat.
The two Eddies. So
I don't know, Eddie George and Eddie Robinson. I don't know about Eddie.
I don't know about it. I really don't know about Eddie Robinson being on the hot seat. I just don't. I mean, they really, really do like they really do like Eddie Robinson down there in Montgomery. Of course, he's an alumnus, playing in the NFL. Y'all know the story. But here's a
different Eddie. Unless he's talking about a different Eddie, but that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I'm hoping he's not talking about
Eddie Robinson got he done bought himself some cachet. He got back-to-back wins, Magic City Classic.
Correct.
He has the revenge upset win over Jackson State. He's preseason pick to win the SWAC. I think he got a little cachet for a minute. He get at least I think he can get at least another 2 years added onto the end of his term. Just all things structured. I mean, unless some catastrophic happens, but.
Yeah, I think Coach Robinson is in a really, really good spot. As you mentioned, he does have those back-to-back Magic City Classic victories. So I mean that goes a while. And here's the other thing too, and Santori and I were talking about that as we were doing the school profiles, was Alabama State has a head football coach and also has a president who are both alums of the university. And then add on top of that, Dr. Quentin Ross, the president, and Coach Robertson were at the university at the same time. So they've known each other for a very long time. And considering the fact that, hey, it was Ross's staff or under his administration that hired Coach Robinson, you have to think that the belief in what he can do as a head coach is definitely something that's been worthwhile. And they've seen some positive with it. Now, Coach Robinson will basically tell you, we still ain't good enough. We still haven't done this. We still haven't done that. But I think for right now, I think Coach Robinson is definitely in a good spot. As far as Coach Eddie George, I think I don't really see the hot seat situation either, because if you think about it, Eddie George was one game away from winning the conference last year.
He was probably one game away from being in the playoffs.
Exactly. He was. So that's why I don't think that he's on a hot seat in any way, shape, or form, or whatever. Now, if they just end up going like 3-8, I'm not. They may have 12 games this season, but you get what I'm saying. But they literally were in. They were in a situation where might have not been like, what's it? No, I think it was the year before last. That's what it was. It wasn't last year.
Year before last was the chance to win the conference. Last year, they were in talks of playoffs until I forget who they lost to. I think everyone's saying they should. I think it was like Tennessee Tech or maybe UT Martin.
They ended the year on a 3-game losing streak, losing to Charleston Southern, Eastern Illinois, and Tennessee.
Charleston Southern. It was Charleston Southern was the first one that everybody was like, they shouldn't have lost that one. And then the Tennessee Tech was I guess you could say, proverbial nail in the coffin to even miss the playoffs. So
yeah, so clearly, I think they like what he's doing up there, and also I don't see Tennessee State that from the athletics administration standpoint saying like we need to start all the way over once again. I just don't see that. I could be wrong. I'm not in their footsteps, not in their shoes, but I just don't see what that's going on. And I think he's been a pretty good ambassador for the university in the city of Nashville, just in general. Because also you think about it like this. If you get rid of him, you better have somebody that can come in here and literally flip the script.
Yeah. Mo, let's move on to the players of the week for both the SWAC in the MEAC. We'll start off with the SWAC. Miles Crawley, quarterback for Grambling State, got the offensive player of the week. Traquan Thomas from Alabama State got defensive player of the week. Joshua Griffin from Southern University got specialist of the week. Cameron McCoy got newcomer of the week for Jackson State, and you spoke about him earlier. And then Savion Tset was also from Southern University, was co newcomer of the week. On the MEAC, we got Jared Hunter. I'm sorry, give me 1 second.
You good?
Jared Hunter was the co-offensive player of the week. Jared Hunter from Howard University. From Norfolk State, Jalen Daniels was the other co-offensive player of the week. Defensive player of the week, Terrence Holland from Howard University. And then rookie of the week, Kyle Gallegos from South Carolina State. Offensive lineman of the week, Nick Tace from South Carolina State. And Dylan West with the game-winning kick over Mercyhurst for Howard University is the specialist of the week.
So congratulations to all those guys. Of course, you know, early season weekly awards, I think, are sometimes a little bit harder to get than what some of the mid-season awards would be. And the reason why I say that is that, of course, you know, you have that out of conference competition. So I think those go a long way as far as like helping you get recognition beyond your conference as well. Whenever, you know, like FCS stats look to put together their All-American teams and, you know, various other things, you know, even from a draft standpoint too, those, from a draft standpoint, you know, those scouts and stuff, you know, we'll see what that competition looks like moving forward. Maybe, you know, they help them more in that situation. But like I said, congratulations to all those folks. It's interesting that on both sides, both the MEAC and the SWAC, you had, you know, co-somethings of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a good possibility for the co-newcomers of the week in the SWAC that they'll more than likely face off against each other with T-Set and McCoy if they're both named the starting quarterbacks this upcoming week for Southern and Jackson State, respectively.
Right. Man, Mo, as we get ready to wrap up, man, I do want to talk about week 3 real quick. You mentioned earlier the game that you're going to be covering this weekend. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. So once again, the rivalry between Jackson State and Southern University continues at Veterans Memorial Stadium in Jackson, Mississippi. Thank God this game is now at 6 p.m. Originally, this game was set to be at like 1 p.m. in mid-September at one point, but both fan bases spoke up and both athletic directors were able to convince ESPN to push that game back. So that game will be happening. Now, here's the interesting note about it. This game is a non-conference game. For anyone,
second year in a row.
Yes. So for anyone that does not know, of course, when you have teams facing each other from different divisions, they play each other for so many years, and then they roll off the schedule. It just so happened that Southern and Jackson rolled off of each other's schedule starting last year. But the athletic directors got together and said this rivalry is too important, and we need to keep these two guys playing for the foreseeable future. Plus, we need to make some money off these games, you know, because Southern's going to come into Jackson and bring a lot of folks. Of course, Jackson brings a lot of folks when they come over to Baton Rouge. So this game will be a non-conference game for the second year once again. And then from there, that's all that really, really matters, because after hearing from both coaches today, they both understand the magnitude of this game. Both teams kind of still think that, oh, this is a SWAC game, because they know it's the next game. So a victory has to be picked up by one of these teams. Coach T.C. Taylor talked about times when he was a player facing Southern University. He said he's had his best game, and he's also had his worst game against Southern University. Coach Graves kind of alluded to that as well. And the other thing, too, you know, the vet is going to be packed. It's going to be packed. If you are making your way over to Jackson, Mississippi, please leave early because tailgating is going to be crazy. Long lines are going to be happening from a driving standpoint. Traffic may be backed up just a little bit and stuff. So, give yourself some time to check out this game. And, if you don't get a chance to go out there to see it in person, it's on ESPN Plus. I'll be on the broadcast with Santoria Black once again. We look to have a solid game between these two longtime foes who have been playing each other for a long, long time. Even on social media today, I saw some of my Southernites saying, I hate J-State week comments going around, and then the J-State folks responding in various ways. So, they understand what the situation is or whatever with that. So even though it's a non-SWAC affair, it's still a battle of two SWAC teams who have a lot of history that go all the way back. Lots of Pro Football Hall of Famers on both sides. Walter Payton and Dr. Doom, along with Aeneas Williams and Harold Carmichael. Just Mel Blunt, just to name a few. So these guys have been playing each other for a long time in these games, had great games, and now we hope to see a solid game on Saturday when the Jaguars come to Jackson, Mississippi to take on Jackson State. And, I'm looking forward to it from an excitement standpoint. And for anyone wondering, so yes, I am a Southern University alumnus. I did play football. I played this game 3 times or whatever. But as soon as I hop into that car and head over to Jackson State, I am a full-fledged member of the media. So I hate to say it like this. I don't care who wins. I just want to see a good game, and I want to call it in the best way that that we can. If anything, you should be asking Santoria Black how he feels about this, with Grambling's 2 biggest rivals facing each other in that scenario. Matter of fact, I'll ask him about that probably in a call we have later on this week. But that's just, like I said, that's just kind of the etiquette we have now with the media standpoint. Yeah. But I think, that definitely is a game that a whole lot of people will be paying attention to this upcoming week. And of course, it's part of a full slate of games that we have. I want to say that's one of the primetime games that's happening in week 3, but it's definitely going to be a good one. You got Southern.
It is looking very bleak because I'm looking at the schedule for the SWAC. Sweet, you got Prairie View going to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. You've got Bethune-Cookman going to Kalamazoo to take on Western Michigan. We already talked about Valley taking on Murray State. Alabama State taking on Sanford. UAPB is going to take on Tennessee State in the Southern Heritage Classic. Edward Waters goes to Alcorn State, Grambling to Texas A&M Commerce, and then another game we mentioned earlier, Georgetown, Kentucky, coming to Alabama A&M.
So Jackson versus Southern seems to be the one that's going to stand out.
Yeah.
I think all these games, because they are the next games on the schedule, they're all definitely important. So whoever you decide to check out, make sure you check it out, you support it or whatever. And so I not trying to be biased because I'm actually at that game, but I think the Southern Jackson State game and Arkansas Pine Bluff versus Tennessee State games will be probably 2 of the best. I'll say this: a sneaky good game could be Alcorn against Edward Waters. It could be. It could be. I know that the SIAC did not do well against the SWAC, but Edward Waters just seems to just be one of those teams that they're sneaky good when they need to be. They're sneaky good when they need to be, but they're going to the reservation, and we know how tough it is to win over there. Sure.
On the MEAC side of things, Wagner's going to Delaware State. Morehouse is taking on Howard in the HBCU Classic in East Rutherford, New York. Morgan State is going to Ohio. We talked about that. Hampton versus Norfolk State, the Battle of the Bay is going down this weekend. North Carolina Central is taking on North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And South Carolina State is going on to take on Georgia Southern. There, Chennis Bear might sneak another one on the side,
Yeah, we'll see what Coach Barry and company can do against Georgia Southern. I mean, Georgia Southern is no slouch coming out of the Sun Belt, so we'll see what happens or whatever with that. I mean, yeah, that Hampton Norfolk State, the Battle of the Bay. I mean, man, yeah, people get up for that one. And honestly, if I'm Coach Dawson Odoms, I definitely think that you need to win that game. You certainly need to win that game after what we've seen, over the first couple of weeks. I'm interested to see how the Howard Morehouse game is going to play itself out. Of course, these two with some pretty solid fan bases, all in all in New York. And, they actually had a really, last time these two played, they had a really decent crowd. And the reason why I say that is, they're playing in MetLife Stadium, which is huge, but, it's decent for, I guess, for what, if you're a promoter, like, okay, hey, we expecting to make this and we got this. So we'll see from there. NC Central, Coach Oliver and company going to take on UNC. Mac Brown and company are 2-0. I know that they're rolling with that backup quarterback after the former quarterback got hurt, the LSU transfer. But
Max Johnson,
yeah. So we kind of know what that situation is. Good luck to Coach Oliver and company. Hope everything works out well, but we understand the magnitude of these type of games in that scenario. And I forgot about Delaware State and Wagner. I mean, Del State, look, they can put it together.
I'm not doubting anybody. I'm not doubting them again. I mean, I can believe one thing, but they definitely showed us something else. Because Sacred Heart was not by any means or a stretch of the imagination just this fluke. Sacred Heart's a perennial competitor in the FCS side.
Correct. Absolutely. And also, let's not forget this, man. Del State was in it with Hawaii for a good minute. After everything that had happened with them on the travel standpoint, and of course, more scholarships and the time change, they were in it for a second. So, Delaware State is starting to show their hand early on, and it's good to know that they'll probably not be a bottom feeder, and they're putting together some sort of competition. So we shall see how it goes down in the MEAC on the outer conference slate of things. But like I said, that Hampton Norfolk State, I think Coach Odom really needs to find a way to get a victory this upcoming week.
Yeah, the last one I got, and didn't intentionally skip over them, but Delaware at North Carolina A&T. All right, that was good. I really ain't got to talk much about that because A&T, it's one thing to beat Winston-Salem and have a good showing in week one, but Delaware is that's I think North Dakota State, probably South Dakota State, and then I think Delaware is up there.
Traditionally, Delaware has been a solid program on the FCS level, but if you're North Carolina A&T, this is another one of those games that you have a chance to prove yourself and really show your worth that you wanted to be not just HBCU good, but also FCS level D1 good on that side. And this type of game that's happening on Saturday, with the Aggies as they take on the Blue Hens, definitely can put them in a different space if they are able to get a victory or victory for sure. I'm not one of those people, that goes off the moral losses and whatnot, but I'm not on that coaching staff either. But hey, you get a victory, you're definitely saying something. But it also, if it becomes like a one possession game, comes down to this and that, that's also showing the case too, especially with that very, very, very tough conference that they lie in right now.
If I'm not mistaken, this is Delaware State last year before they ride off.
I think so. They're joining Conference USA, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. But before we get ready to go, Mo, I just want to say to the people, hey, for those of you who don't know, we do now have a website, gotoboot.com. And we're just trying to make sure we can provide the best. So one thing we did add, stats. Now you can go to our page. Every school in the HBCU D1 is represented here. We've got the SWAC conference. We've got the MEAC. We've got the CAA and also the Big South / OVC guys. And then for everyone else, for Louisiana fan base, we got all the rest of the remaining Louisiana schools listed here. So again, you can find that at goldenboot.com. Go to the stats and check it out. All right. But Mo, man, I want to say you again, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate seeing you, seeing your work and stuff, and having you come on and talk with us, man.
Hey, it's not a problem, man. I always appreciate you guys, bringing me on for the invite. I hope Ann is doing well in that situation, and also for our viewers and listeners back in, South Texas and also across the state of Louisiana, my home state. Want everyone to be safe as as Francine, potentially makes her way, into the state over these next couple of days. So talked to my mom and dad. They said they're okay. They've been through enough of these, so they're totally fine. But if you're new to this or whatever, I just want to make sure that everybody's okay. Stay prayed up, be prepared, and everything else will be a-okay. Moving forward and whatnot, and just be safe. Stay weather aware. Look at your local television stations to see what's going on. The Weather Channel's making their way down there and stuff. I think they'll start their coverage tomorrow. But yeah, definitely be safe. And of course, they may alter some things from a sports landscape, but that's only because they want to make sure that the lives of everyone and the safety of everyone is a-okay first before sports comes back into the fold, into the mix.
Yeah. Also want to say before we get ready to go, rest in power, James Earl Jones. He was pivotal in a lot of people's lives in some of the movies, whether you know him from being Darth Vader in Star Wars. I can't think of his name, but the old man in Meteor Man.
You know what? Google's my friend. I'm literally gonna tell you this in like 2 seconds, but keep talking about something else.
Yeah. Mufasa from The Lion King. His voice was very recognizable. Even seeing him in like The Sandlot and stuff.
Yes.
He was like all my childhood growing up. He was just an amazing actor, amazing thespian. Has an EGOT, so major, my condolences to his family and to all those who loved him around the world.
Absolutely. He was Ernest Moses in the Meteor Man film. And of course, we can't forget about him being King Joffrey Jafar and Coming to America.
Oh, man. Yeah. Man. My son works.
Who told you that?
Yeah. But Mo, before you go, you know how we do, man. Tell the people where they can find you.
Absolutely. You can find me on social media at Mo Carter Fox 54. That's both on the app formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, and also on Facebook. And as far as my work when it comes to covering teams here in the state of Alabama, you can go to fox54.com, hit the sports tab, and see various things that we do not only with Alabama A&M and the University of North Alabama, but Bama State, Auburn, and Alabama for sure. And you can also hit up our YouTube page, Fox 54, to see all the work we continue to do there, and we do a lot of high school stuff up here as well. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also catch me this weekend on the broadcast with Santoria Black for ESPN Plus as Southern takes on Jackson at 6 p.m. Central, live from Jackson, Mississippi.
Man, can't wait. Want to thank everybody for watching. We may be back Thursday. I'm not sure yet. But if not, check the website. We'll definitely put predictions and stuff on there. Try to keep updated with some of the other stuff going on. And but we out of here. Like that, we're out. This show was presented by betonline.ag.
Bring me my money.